Hello everyone, welcome back. Here's a problem you see often with citrus trees, and that is dropping leaves. And you can't seem to figure out why. I mean, we've got a lot of light. We're right by a southern facing window. We've supplemented it with artificial light, so we've checked the light box. Then you just have nutrition, and so it's being fertilized and watered, so that doesn't make any sense. The leaves are super green and healthy. It doesn't have any nutrient deficiency. Why is it dropping leaves? Some of the internal leaves are turning yellow and falling off. And then even some of these really nice green leaves that look so healthy are falling off, and we can't figure out why. And so 99.9% of the time, it's some kind of pest, and it's usually either scale or spider mites. And take a look here. You see that little lemon there, the little baby lemon that's wrapped up in, looks like spider webs? That's a telltale sign that we have a spider mite infestation going on here. If you had scale, the symptom would be that it would be really, really sticky. You would feel like, just like sap of your plant all over the place. That tells you it's scale. Here's another spider mite. You can see him moving on that little piece of web there in between the leaf and the stem of the tree. So spider mites are destructive. Here's a feijoa suffering from spider mite infestation. So I didn't know what was going on for a long time. I was trying to figure it out myself. I was going crazy. I'm like, I don't understand. These were in the basement. They were healthy and happy. I brought them upstairs, and this started happening. And is it? It's not that it's too warm. We don't keep our house that warm. It's not that they don't have light. They probably have more light up here than in the basement. It's not that, so you're racking your brain and you're like, wait, those leaves are crispy. What does the dirt feel like? Maybe I need to water them more. Maybe they need more fertilizer. And those are all very logical things to think. But it's spider mites. Take a look. We'll go in and kind of zoom in here. You can see the plant is weeping a little bit there from its wounds, because what spider mites will do is they'll attack all the buds, and then they'll also just attack the stems, and they sort of work their way from the middle of the plant out. Take a look here. See, that's the telltale sign, the webs. You see that webbing, you have spider mites. And like I said, if you're suffering leaf drop and you can't figure out why in citrus, or in this case pineapple, guava, feijoa, it's almost always pests if they're inside. Now outside, there's all kinds of things that prey upon these, so you don't have to worry about it. This is what I use. Now, this is Spinosad, Captain Jack, so this is a naturally occurring bacteria. It was actually discovered as a byproduct of the rum distillation industry. Kind of interesting. Fairly harmless to animals and people, but very harmful to bugs. It's a bacteria, does all kinds of cool things to help you out. So these plants are just going to get a bath in it. Now, since I'm in the basement, I can just spray it. It can get on the floor. It doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt anything. Also, you don't have to worry about this with your pets. A lot of pet products have Spinosad in them for fleas, for example. So it's a fairly innocuous thing to use. Inside, you don't want to be using a lot of real hard pesticides. You don't really want to use them anyway unless you have to, but sometimes you have to. So these are the trees after their bath. One thing I found that's interesting is these citrus trees are much happier in the basement. They like the cool. That's a big part of it, I think. It's about 50 to 55 degrees down here. And I think the other thing is there's no houseplants down here. We have a lot of houseplants upstairs, and I think they have spider mites in them, and maybe they're just not as affected as the citrus trees were. There's our rosemary that we've had for several years. I made a video on that a few years ago. So we'll take a look at these. This is a couple weeks later, this part of the film, after I sprayed. So the ones that were down here never had really any issues with spider mites because, outside there's a lot of natural predators that keep them at bay, and they also do not like to be wet. And so if you can constantly spray just water mist on your plants like every few days, that supposedly will help control them as well. Now, a lot of people, myself included, don't really have the time to do that on that kind of schedule, you really have to make it a point. But keeping citrus trees inside for the winter is really the biggest thing is pests. You can find light, and they're pretty forgiving with light as long as you give them some supplemental light and put them near a window, or just have really good grow lights or cheap hyper tough shop lights like I have here. They're pretty forgiving light wise as long as you water them moderately. Don't go crazy, don't drive yourself nuts about it. Just water them every so often when they need water. They're fine with that, but it's going to be pests that are the hard thing. It's like trying to keep them alive until spring before the pests just take over and become an infestation. That's the hardest. That's what I've found to be the hardest part of it. So this year, before I brought them in, I covered them with, I sprayed them with 7 outside, really, really well, and soaked them before I brought them inside. And I haven't had scale. Scale is usually what does me in with these things, but this year it was just the spider mites. So now I know, and I think the spider mites came from our houseplants upstairs when I brought, because the ones that have been in the basement the whole time never had spider mites. The other thing that's interesting too is certain kinds of citrus seem more affected than others. Like lemons seem very susceptible. This is a Kefir lime, a Thai lime. This was upstairs and it never really got any spider mite damage. It was right next to all the other, the feijoas and the limes. Feijoas seem to be a favorite. This is a Satsuma mandarin. This has been in the basin the whole time. It never had any spider mites bothering it. And just showing the fruit mostly because it's looking like it's getting somewhere, but it's definitely dependent on the variety of citrus. It seems like lemons are susceptible. Here's our hyper tough shop lights, the ones I used for seedlings for years. Since I'm using them down here in the basement for these, I have some smaller ones that I bought on Amazon for the seedlings, just regular old LED grow lights. It was like $50 for a pack of 6 or something, and they seem to be working well. I mean, you don't have to overthink it with lights when it comes to citrus or plants. You can spend as much or as little as you want. You're going to get the same result pretty much. But yeah, it's going to be pests. Pests are what is going to get you. Now this plant had some spider mite damage as well. I brought it upstairs for a bit because it looked cool. This is a key lime. It's also in a small pot for this size plant. It grew so fast last year. Citrus grow really fast when they're happy, so this one will be fine. I'll just prune it back a little bit, clean it up. It's almost spring. It's mid-March, and so these will go outside in another 4 or 5 weeks from now. They'll start to go outside again. Just have to bring them in at night sometimes, but they'll start their reacclimation period to being outside. But this guy right here, this Lisbon lemon, has these huge leaves, and when it was upstairs, it was dropping 5 or 6 big leaves every day. This has been about a week or 2 since I sprayed to get rid of the spider mites and brought it back down in the basement, and it's dropped like a total of 3 or 4 leaves in a week or 2, whereas it used to be 4 or 5 every day. And you sit on the couch, you'd hear this like thump, this weird swooshy thump sound, like, oh, there's another leaf dropping on this thing. But now it's happy. It's much happier. So is this one. It lost a lot of leaves, as you can see, but it has stopped losing leaves. It's 1, 2, 3 in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. It used to lose 10 to 12 every day when it was in its peak of being attacked by those mites. It's got some fruit on it. It'll leaf back out. That's the thing. These plants will recover as long as you get to them in time. So yeah, if you're having leaf drop that you can't explain, I would almost guarantee it's spider mites or scale. Like I said, scale you're going to know because everything's going to be super sticky. The leaves will be sticky, the branches will be sticky, the floor on the plant will be sticky. If that's not the case, then it's almost certainly spider mites. So grab a magnifying glass and look around and you'll see. But these plants are happy now. They had their Spinosad bath, and now we just have to get them outside before the next wave of spider mites comes, because they are resilient and they will return again and again, unfortunately, at least from my experience. So it's almost like a race against the clock some years to get these plants outside before the spider mites come back. So thank you for watching. If you have questions, feel free to post them in the comment section below, and be happy to talk about ways to combat the spider mites because they are probably the toughest pest for indoor plants.